Well, good evening, everyone. Meteorologist Michael Wilhite here with Southern Indiana Weather. I want to bring you the first of hopefully what will be the long-range updates coming back. It's been a while since I've done these. So let's get right back into it here, hoping to make this kind of a weekly thing. We're in kind of a complicated pattern here right now, folks, and we'll kind of dive through this. Got a tropical storm brewing in the Gulf, and that's going to jack up our weather pattern here. So first off, I know many of you are asking, what about some rain here in Indiana, Southern Indiana, where I'm forecasting for? We could certainly use some rain. There were some scattered showers around, but really central and northern Indiana got most of that today, and we really got the shaft on this. As you just take a look at the GFS here, you can see not really a whole lot of hope for rain until this weekend comes in, and even this is a little deceiving because it's not going to be just an overwhelming, impressing amount of total here. But notice what you got coming here. This is Tropical Storm Nate coming in, and Nate falling here probably somewhere around Louisiana, maybe as east as Gulf Shores, but somewhere in this general neighborhood. And you notice as it moves through, the remnants will sort of move through into the area. Now, exactly where they move through the area will be key to determining where that rain goes. For us, I love you all down in Kentucky, but I'd love to hog that rain in southern Indiana because we could certainly use it. But unfortunately, right now it doesn't look like we're going to get it. We're several days away. Some things can change, all right? As we head into the longer term there, then you just notice not a ton of rain chances coming until maybe as we head here later in the month toward the 19th. We've got another pretty big front that's going to come through. But again, the way oftentimes you see things in the modelings, the longer you are in time down the road, it might look impressive. As you get there a little bit closer to it, doesn't look nearly as impressive, and so we'll keep our fingers crossed. But unfortunately, that one could peter out to nothing, just as easy as some of these others have as well. So we'll have to see. Let me sort of go back here in time. And we'll talk about this weekend here just really quickly, a little bit more in depth. Here we go on to tomorrow morning. Notice there's some rain up in northern Indiana, and that's pretty much where it stays. Southern Indiana doesn't see much of anything here until about tomorrow evening. Let's take a little bit of a higher res approach to this and show you that. Here's what the high res NAM is showing as far as rain goes. So here is tomorrow morning. And there you can see some rain up into the northern portions of the state. We might get a stray shower at best here, but don't count on it. The next chance for us, decent chance, and it's not really even decent, I say that with quotation marks, will come on Saturday. Saturday morning, looking pretty dry here around the area. We're not going to see much of anything. Even here in the afternoon, here's 2 o'clock in the afternoon, but there's an approaching cold front to the west. By the time we get to about 5 Eastern, 4 Central time here in the afternoon, that's when we get a little line of showers moving through the state. Might have some rumbles of thunder here, but it's not looking overly impressive, and you see it looks more impressive to the north and really not that impressive at all as you get down here into the southern part of the state. That sort of squeaks by here. It starts to elongate out and sort of break up then as you get into the night there. So not really expecting a tremendous amount of rain from this on Saturday, unfortunately, and I wouldn't be surprised if frankly, if some people just flat out get missed on this. When you're talking about situations like this down here where you're talking about an individual cell there and there and there. This is just real spotty stuff. It's not a solid line. And so as this moves through, you may get some decent rains up here, but folks down in here, unfortunately, it looks like we may end up getting missed for a large part on this. So that's something that we'll have to keep an eye on. Rain chances right now on Saturday, just not really all that impressive to me at this point. 30-40%, not looking good. Now, unfortunately, if we could get a little bit of that rain from Tropical Storm Nate, that could be a game changer. But right now, that's not what we're seeing. So here's the latest from the Hurricane Center on Nate. Nate's running about a 40-mile-per-hour wind right now, and here's the path that the Hurricane Center believes that it will take. And you notice the remnants kind of coming right to the east of Nashville here, and then right along just into the borderline of Kentucky. Anywhere in this cone here is what we call the cone of uncertainty, and the average error this many days out is this wide, and that's why there's a cone of uncertainty with that. So, it's possible that it could track a little bit more north. north. So we'll just have to see. I will say this, if you look at the hurricane models, the latest hurricane models are tracking pretty much in a good agreement on that. But if you look at the GFS ensembles actually tracking it a little bit closer to us. So it's not a situation where we're completely set in stone here. Remember the hurricane models here, we're tracking it in a fashion more like this, and of course that would keep the rain away from us, whereas the GFS ensembles, the ensemble data would give us a pretty healthy soaking with this. So it's not off the table that we can get some rain, but unfortunately not all the model data is agreeing, so we'll just have to keep our fingers crossed and say a little rain prayer and hope for the best as we sort of get a little bit later on into the week. Now, if you have travel plans down towards the south, tropical storm force winds are pretty likely from Louisiana all the way up here to maybe Gulf Shores towards the Pensacola area. The probabilities start to fall off as you get a little bit beyond that. So if you've got plans down towards the south, you'll want to keep an eye on that. We're looking at probably a landfall for this thing right around Sunday morning here, and the National Hurricane Center here right around New Orleans. But this has been shifting west, and I wouldn't be surprised if this shifts a little bit more west, and that's what we'll hope for, because the further west it shifts, the more likely it is to come into our area and give us some rain. So I don't know, for my part, we could certainly use some rain. We're a little bit dry around here, and so we could use that. I would certainly take it. Now, what about temperatures then? Let's talk about where we're going to go next week then, before we end the video. We've been talking on the Facebook page a little bit about some 60s next week, and it was looking good for some 60s, but then Tropical Storm Nate had to come in and jack with things. And now highs in the 60s looking very questionable. Highs in the 70s are looking more likely to me at this point. So here's the reason why. Watch as this is our heights in the upper layers of the atmosphere, about 40,000 feet up. Watch Nate sort of come up into here, and watch this trough start to dig down from the west. That trough was looking more impressive a few days ago and looked like it could give us some chillier weather. So basically what you have when you have a trough coming down, that tends to bring cooler weather down with it, whereas you have a ridge and this brings warmer weather with it. That's the basic synopsis of it. Notice how that trough just kind of goes right over us. It's because of Nate. Here's Tropical Storm Nate right here, and as Nate comes on, it just sort of forces that up, and what you end up seeing as Nate gets absorbed and goes back is you end up with this pattern that we are in right now, where what you have here is a ridge of high pressure in the southeast. Those are very common in La Nina years, by the way. So folks, if you've watched my winter forecast, then you know we're in a La Nina year. Get used to that. That's going to be a very persistent feature this year, which is why I think for the most part here in the Ohio Valley, we are not going to get the cold and snow like most people are talking about. That's, to me, very much a wish casting kind of scenario. That's not to say we're not going to have some cold spells over the winter time. I think it's more wish casting than it is anything to say that we're going to be colder than normal, because that's not what we are likely going to see. This southeast ridge probably going to be a pretty persistent feature this winter. It always is, or almost always is, in La Nina years. And it's already messing with us this fall. This is what's given us the warm October. You've also got a ridge right up here to our north that's been a pretty persistent feature, so we haven't really had a chance to get much of the cooler weather. The troughs have been digging well to the north of us, and as you can see, that ridge, here we are, well into the 15th now, into the middle of the month, going to be a persistent feature. What does that tell me? Folks, that tells me it's going to be warm all the way through at least the mid part of the month with this. Another trough potentially digs down, but watch this. As you get into the later in the month, it kind of cuts here and starts to cut up in this direction here. And why does it do that? Because again, there's the southeast ridge off of here, and it's sort of going up and around it. It looks pretty nice right now in the long range, where it could give us a pretty decent little cool shot here. But let me just show you this. All right, so this was a few days ago what it was showing for next week, with a pretty decent little trough over us, where we could get some highs even in the lower 60s out of that. But now let me just sort of back up in time and remind you that this is what we're facing now. All right, there's Nate coming in off of this, and so early next week then, as that passes, this is now what we are facing instead of this. That's a pretty big difference. A trough with cooler temperatures versus a ridge in the southeast with warmer temperatures for us. Well, that's going to be the forecast challenge all winter long, folks, unfortunately. What about temperatures then? Here's the latest data for this. We start off tomorrow morning in the lower 60s, kind of on the muggy side. We'll go up to 79, 80 degrees or so tomorrow afternoon. Saturday, we're going to be back to the mid to upper 70s, even some 80s around the area. Just depends on whether we see any rain with that or not. Sunday, there we are, back into the 80s here in southern Indiana as well. You get into Monday, there's the 80s again. Tuesday, all right, we start off muggy on Tuesday here, 81 degrees is now what the data is suggesting. And you'll remember just a day or two ago when I released my last 10-day forecast, we were talking highs in the low 70s and going into the 60s following this. Well, watch this. By the time you get on to Wednesday, now you're starting to see some relief. That front is through, but you're still talking temperatures in the lower 70s here, all right? Down to, by Thursday morning, into the lower 50s. That'll be some refreshing air. And then possibly on Thursday, maybe a 67-degree day here in southern Indiana. So we'll hold out some possible, but it doesn't last long because, look at this. Friday, we're back to near 70, a 68-degree there too. We go down to about 44 that night, and then here's another 68-degree on Saturday. So you're getting the hints of maybe some upper 60s. But honestly, with the trend that we're going with this, I wouldn't be surprised if those actually go back up into the lower 70s rather than the upper 60s at this point. I'm just going to warn you, folks, that's the trend in the data. Because the data had it in the lower 60s. And so, it is going to be a nice welcome relief. We're not looking at 80s after we get this front through. And so praise the Lord for those of us who love fall. That's a good thing to get those gone. But we're also not looking at lower 60s like we were originally thinking. It just doesn't look like the trough is going to be quite that strong yet, unfortunately. So, and then beyond that, we do have some temperatures in the 70s returning by that Sunday, and then more 70s after that. And you see the 70s becoming kind of a dominant feature there until you get later on into October. The model ends there with possibly on the 21st with highs in the 50s to near 60. But again, that's because of another trough that sort of looks like this in the modeling. So this would be the temperature that corresponds with that. This is the end of the model run. There's the end of the model run there. But again, remember that it looked similar to this just a couple of days ago, and it fizzled out into we're going to be in a ridge rather than a trough. So once we get into these longer range, we just can't trust it. One thing that we can do, though, is to take a look at our teleconnections to help us forecast. These are oftentimes used over winter, and in a lot of videos I've showed you these in the past, the PNA, the Pacific North American. Whenever it's in the negative, that usually means a ridge for us in the east and a trough in the west. And if I flip it up to the positive, vice versa, we get the trough, the ridge goes in towards the west. We'll take a look at where we are here now. We are already in the negative. We've been in the negative for a while here with the warmth that's come on, and look at this. We're forecast to go way down into the negative. There's a forecast trend that might take it towards positive as we enter that longer period, but again, folks, it's just not looking good. To me, it looks like we're probably going to end up staying on the negative side in the PNA for a good little while. And so basically what that means at this point is don't expect this heat to really go anywhere. This heat's going to stick around for a while now. Are we going to see overwhelming days in the 80s after next week? Those may be done. But I would say as we get through most of the rest of October that you're going to see more 70-degree days than you are 60-degree days. And that is still above normal. This time of the year we should be into the mid to upper 60s over most of the area for our high temperature. And we're just not there yet. All right, folks, that's it for this long-range update. I'll try to have another one of these sometime in the next week. Again, I'm going to try to make this a weekly thing, more if I can do it. But lots going on, and we'll try to bring these back little by little as I go. I'm meteorologist Michael Wilhite with SouthernIndianaWeather.com. I'll have another update here for you as we get a little bit more, again, with Nate and where it's going to go. We'll look at that a little bit more. And then, again, expect these long-range updates to come back about once a week.